The chosen one. They tested your DNA in the lab and were shocked. They thought you were an ordinary person, but even science couldn't explain who you are. Your blood contains the codes of history's greatest leaders, warriors, and wise souls. They analyzed you, but they were astonished by what they found. Because you didn't come to this world just to live. You came to write history, to overcome boundaries, to achieve the impossible. See the power within you now. Awaken that legendary DNA, step towards your destiny, and write 777 in the comments. Because the world doesn't know who you are yet, but it will find out very soon. The day unfolded like an unbroken thread, woven with routine. Footsteps echoed on pavement, casual greetings flickered between neighbors, and life hummed in its usual rhythm. Then came the shift. A distant wail split the air, followed by the pulse of flashing lights. The world outside remained the same, yet something unseen had been set in motion. Figures in uniform moved with measured purpose, speaking in tones too low to decipher. Their presence an omen that the familiar was about to fracture. When they stopped in front of you, their expression unreadable, the air thickened. The weight of unspoken judgment settled in before the first word left their lips. "We need to talk." What followed was not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate move, crafted with precision. The claim leveled against you wasn't designed to spark debate or investigation. It was a sentence, issued without trial. You didn't need details to understand the game being played. This wasn't about proving anything. It was about dismantling you piece by piece. The space you once occupied so naturally had turned foreign. Familiar faces hesitated, their glances lingering just a breath too long before retreating. Voices softened when you neared, conversations fading into unfinished thoughts. Trust wasn't being questioned. It had already been withdrawn. You scanned the eyes of those enforcing this charade, seeking a glimmer of hesitation, a crack in the performance. Some knew the truth, or at least suspected it. But suspicion was irrelevant now. Once a story is set in motion, it no longer needs proof to grow. It feeds on silence, on hesitation, on the ease with which uncertainty spreads. The machinery had been set in motion before you even knew the game had begun, and you were never meant to be heard, only condemned. But those who built this illusion made one fatal miscalculation. They assumed you would surrender to it. Falsehoods move with speed, cutting through certainty like wildfire. But truth has an uncanny way of threading itself into the cracks. You felt it in the way walls closed in. Doors shut too fast, gazes darted away before meeting yours. You heard it in the unnatural hush that followed your presence, in the weight of words exchanged when they believed you weren't listening. Fear carried its own volume, and it was deafening. It didn't matter that the accusations crumbled under scrutiny. The words had been spoken, and in that instant, reality bent around them. It was no longer about what was true, but about what people chose to believe. You walked past those who once acknowledged you without thought, only to see stiffness in their movements, caution in their eyes. A mother adjusted her stance, subtly shielding her child as you passed. Not overt, not aggressive, but enough to leave a mark. A gesture so small, yet laced with rejection. The place you once called home had been twisted into a quiet battleground. Not just for you, but for everyone who now found themselves entangled in the whispering undercurrents of doubt. Those who had once stood together were now watching each other, gauging their own vulnerability. Who had set this into motion? Who believed first? Who carried the lie forward? Paranoia seeped into the cracks, spreading beyond its intended target. This was never just about you. It was about control, about proving how easily people could be turned against one another. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom. For you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. The plan was simple: isolate, destabilize, erase. But it relied on one key element: compliance. They expected submission, for fear to do their work for them. They didn't expect resistance. What they failed to realize was that every shadow cast by deception could be pierced by light. And while they waited for you to break, you were watching too, taking note of who turned away and who hesitated. Because just as quickly as lies take root, the truth can unravel them. And for now, standing your ground was enough. The cracks were already forming. You had sensed it all along, how the surface of this community had been stretched too thin, how the smiles never quite reached the eyes. This moment didn't create division. It revealed it. This was supposed to be a test, a line drawn to force a choice. Instead, it was an unraveling. You saw it in the clipped exchanges, in the sudden distance between those who once moved in unison. You heard it in the sharp-edged tones of quiet disputes, the weight of unspoken accusations lingering in the air. The moment people realized a story could be rewritten at will, they began to wonder when their own names might be next. The foundation they once called unshakable is showing its fractures, revealing the decay beneath. Resentments that lay dormant now crawl to the surface. The one who swore allegiance now wonders if betrayal was planted at their doorstep. The defender of yesterday suddenly finds doubt gnawing at his certainty, its disorder masquerading as discipline. They believed singling you out would restore their harmony, that painting you as the villain would absolve them of their own wrongs. But their calculation was flawed, because fear, once unleashed, does not stop. It turns, it spreads, and now they are the ones looking over their shoulders. The architects of deception, the voices that whispered first, now find themselves under the same scrutiny they once encouraged. Their fortress of secrecy is buckling under the weight of its own contradictions. You stand back, watching, as their alliances turn brittle, their carefully spun stories begin to fracture. You do not need to lift a hand. Their downfall is self-inflicted. The fire they set to consume you now licks at their heels, and the ones who thought themselves untouchable are drowning in the chaos they created. They thought they had sealed your fate, that their plan was foolproof, but they overlooked the one force they could never control. An unseen current shifts, redirecting the storm before it can engulf you. A key witness, poised to seal your condemnation, falters. Their certainty erodes mid-sentence. Their conviction dissolves. They stumble over their own words, retreating into uncertainty. It isn't confusion, it's interference. Threads of evidence unravel, files lost, records altered, statements riddled with inconsistencies no one can explain. The very proof meant to bury you vanishes like mist at dawn. The case against you does not merely weaken, it is undone. The enforcers, once so sure of their judgment, now hesitate. Their unwavering stance gives way to uncertainty, their glances filled with doubt. The ground beneath their accusations crumbles, revealing the emptiness at its core. You remained standing, not because you begged, not because you resisted, but because they never truly held the power to bring you down. Their weapons were illusions, their strategy built on shifting ground. And when deceit collides with a force greater than itself, it cannot stand. They mistook their control for destiny, their authority for certainty. But now, as their web of deception coils around them, as they scramble to explain why every thread is unraveling, they are forced to face the truth. They were never in command of this, and they were never going to win. This is for those who recognize the unseen battle, the ones who move against the current, the ones who were never meant to blend in. Not everyone will understand, and that's fine. But if something in you stirs at these words, if you feel the pull in your spirit, then you already know this is for you. The ones who walk their own path, who defy expectation, who refuse to be molded into anything other than their true selves. You do not wait for permission. You do not ask for approval. You move with the force of a wave, unstoppable, undeniable. Where others crumble, you build. Where others waver, you stand. And if this resonates, perhaps it's time you found those who speak your language. A place beyond the surface, where illusion holds no power, where masks are unnecessary. If you are ready, you will know where to look. If not, then this was never meant for you to see. The deception was meant to be seamless, crafted to cling to your name like a shadow that could never be erased. But cracks have formed. Subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. A missing detail, a discrepancy buried in the noise, an oversight they never expected you to catch. And now, the unraveling has begun. You don't search for the truth out of desperation. You pursue it because you know it's there. This wasn't random. It wasn't chance. A thread pulls loose, and as you tug at it, the entire fabric begins to fray. Documents contradict their own claims. Names appear in places they shouldn't. And what was once concealed now fights its way into the light. The truth doesn't lead to a single culprit. It stretches outward, entangling more than just one name. This wasn't the result of idle talk or misunderstanding. It was deliberate, an operation orchestrated behind closed doors. Someone designed this, shaped it, breathed life into it, and yet they overlooked one thing. The same strings they pulled to manipulate the story are now wrapping around them like a snare. The accusations they hurled so easily now boomerang back. Their own statements betray them. Their own signatures act as the ink sealing their downfall. What was once whispered in secret now echoes back at full volume, relentless and inescapable. The illusion is collapsing without your intervention. The loudest voices have turned quiet. The most confident accusers suddenly fumble for words, desperate to rewrite their own role in the story. The architects of this deception feel the ground shifting beneath them, their once stable foundation crumbling into dust. The truth was, the one force they never accounted for, and now it moves against them with undeniable momentum. You expected the isolation. You expected the wary glances, the hesitant movements, the way former allies drifted away like leaves caught in the wind. But this shift, this unraveling of their own creation, you never anticipated. Then, an unexpected visitor. Not an authority figure, not an enemy, just an ordinary person, someone who has always been there, blending into the background. They step forward with something they were never meant to possess. Proof, a video, a timestamp, a fragment of reality that dismantles everything the deception was built upon. They offer it without flair, their voice steady, but their hands uncertain. "I don't want to be involved," they murmur, "but I can't pretend I don't know the truth." And just like that, the foundation of their lie splinters further. More follow. A once loyal official asks the wrong question, not to you, but to them. Why have witness accounts changed? Why does the evidence contradict itself? Why does every road lead back to the same orchestrators? You don't need to defend yourself anymore. You don't need to chase anyone. The illusion is collapsing under its own weight, and those who stood against you can feel it. Even the bystanders, those who neither supported nor condemned, have begun to speak, their neutrality giving way to quiet admissions. The momentum has shifted. The final blow doesn't come from you, but from the unexpected. People who once had no reason to care now stepping forward, unwilling to let the deception stand. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. Before you even enter the room, you feel it. The tension is thick, electric. They're waiting, not to make amends, not to hear you out, but to see you falter. They expect you to crumble beneath the weight of the accusations, to bow under the force of their anger. But you don't. You stand firm, unmoved, as the storm they summoned swirls around them. Their voices rise, desperate to drown out the undeniable. They throw out more lies, layering falsehoods in an attempt to salvage what remains. Then, a fatal mistake, an inconsistency, a contradiction, a slip they cannot take back. The atmosphere shifts. A pause ripples through the crowd. It happens fast. First a glance, then a murmured doubt, then the unmistakable shift of uncertainty in their eyes. The foundation of their story is no longer solid. It's crumbling beneath them, piece by piece. And this time, you don't have to say a word. The silence speaks for you. The weight of the deception falls on them now, pressing down, suffocating. They scramble to redirect, to push the narrative back into chaos, where manipulation thrives. But it's too late. The seeds of doubt have taken root. Whispers begin, not about you, but about them. The tide has turned, and now the ones who built the lie find themselves cornered by their own creation. The shift is undeniable. The weight that once pressed down on you has shifted, its burden now resting on the shoulders of those who thought themselves untouchable. You see it in the way they move, the hesitancy in their voices, the uncertainty that was never there before. The room feels different now. The questions have changed. No longer directed at you, no longer laced with presumption. The ones who stood so sure, who spoke as if their word was law, now find their statements unraveling, their certainty fading. The lie that once held power now feels like air, weightless, insubstantial, incapable of holding its form. And they know it. The ones who led the charge against you are shifting in their seats, their confidence cracking under the weight of their own fabrications. The same mouths that once declared you guilty now hesitate, tripping over their own words. They sense it now, that they are no longer the ones in control. Eyes that once scrutinized you are now turning toward them. An officer clears his throat, flipping through notes with a deliberate pause. "Let's go over that again," he says, his voice measured but firm. The room tenses. Someone exhales too sharply, Another's hands twitch in their lap. The balance of power has shifted, and they feel it slipping through their fingers. They reach for control, for the ease with which they once dictated the narrative, but it's gone. Their words, once sharp as daggers, now fall flat, unable to pierce the air the way they once did. The fortress they built around their deception is crumbling, brick by brick. The alliances they counted on begin to fracture. The ones who once stood united against you now glance at one another with unease, searching for an exit, for a way out before the collapse is complete. The same system they wielded as a weapon is no longer under their command. The fear they used against you has turned inward. They tried to cast you as the distraction, the scapegoat, the vessel to contain their secrets, but they underestimated one thing. The truth doesn't stay buried. Let me tell you something. When the storm rolls in, it doesn't ask permission. It doesn't tap on the window and say, "Are you ready?" No, it comes crashing in, tearing through everything that isn't anchored. And the things that looked so steady, so unshakable, they start falling apart. Because here's the truth, only what's built on solid ground will stand when the winds of reckoning blow. And right now, those who built their house on deception, on manipulation, on control, they're watching the walls crack, the roof buckle, the foundation shift beneath them. See, at first, they thought they had this all figured out. They thought they could point the finger, shift the blame, create a distraction. They thought if they shined a bright enough light on you, no one would look at them. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated the power of truth. And truth, my friend, is like a flood. You might try to hold it back, might try to build a dam, stack the sandbags, cover up the leaks, but once it starts moving, nothing can stop it. Now, the scope widens. The scrutiny spreads beyond you, creeping into corners they never thought would be touched. The investigators aren't just questioning the surface anymore. They are peeling back layers, unraveling connections that were never meant to see the light of day. Paper trails emerge, inconsistencies multiply, names appear where they shouldn't. And beneath it all, something far larger than a single accusation. This was never just about you. This was about hiding something bigger, something that required a scapegoat, a diversion. They thought they could dangle you in front of the world while slipping away unnoticed. But now, they are the ones under the microscope, and their panic is no longer about you. It is about survival. Because here's what happens. When deception starts unraveling, it doesn't stop. One thread comes loose, then another, until the whole thing collapses. And right now, the very people who were so eager to condemn you are starting to feel the heat. The tables have turned, and they don't know where to run. Their story isn't holding up. The questions are getting harder. The things they thought they buried are rising to the surface, and you don't even have to fight. You don't have to plead your case. The truth is fighting for you. It's doing the work. It's moving through places you could never reach on your own. It's exposing, revealing, dismantling. Because when God moves, He doesn't just clear your name, He sets things right. And He does it in such a way that there's no doubt, no argument, no maybe. It's undeniable. You see, they thought they were in control. They thought they dictated the outcome. But they forgot something. They aren't the authors of this story. They might have written some pages, but they don't hold the pen. And right now, the ink is drying on a new chapter, and they aren't going to like how it ends. The deeper the digging goes, the clearer it becomes. The lies weren't just about protecting themselves from exposure. They weren't just about power or influence or saving face. No, this was something bigger. This was about keeping control. This was about making sure no one ever questioned the system they built. Because once people start asking questions, once they start seeing behind the curtain, once they realize how deep the corruption runs, there's no stopping the shift that follows. And that's what's happening now. People are waking up. They're looking around and seeing things they never noticed before. They're realizing that the ones they trusted, the ones they followed, the ones they believed, they were never telling the whole truth. And now, the foundation of deceit they stood on is crumbling beneath them. They're scrambling, trying to patch the holes, trying to hold on to the little power they have left. But it's too late. The floodgates have opened. And just like a dam that's reached its breaking point, once the pressure is too much, it all comes crashing down. They thought they could sacrifice you to save themselves, but they didn't realize the moment they put you in the fire, they were stepping into it themselves. Because the fire isn't just burning away the lies they told about you. It's burning away the very structure they depended on. And here's the thing about fire. It doesn't just destroy. It purifies. It separates the real from the fake, the solid from the weak, the truth from the deception. And right now, the fire is revealing everything. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially, far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed, and let the light of the Lord guide your path. With every revelation, the illusion they crafted weakens. The deeper the investigation goes, the more evident it becomes. This was never about justice. It was never about right or wrong. It was about shielding themselves, about fortifying their own positions at the expense of anyone who stood in their way. They thought erasing you would protect them. Instead, it has exposed them. The light they feared is closing in, and there is no longer anywhere left to hide. They believed they were untouchable, that their positions, their influence, their ability to manipulate the narrative would keep them safe. When they turned against you, it was easy. They didn't think. They didn't question. They followed, blindly, willingly, because it was simpler than looking too closely at the cracks in their own foundation. But now, those cracks have widened, and they can feel it, that slow, suffocating realization settling over them. They weren't just bystanders, they were participants. They lit the fire meant to consume you, never considering that they might be caught in its embers. Now, they stand among the wreckage, grasping for stability that no longer exists. The system they upheld, the one that fed on deceit and thrived in manipulation, is collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. You don't need to speak. They already know. They sit in cold rooms under harsh lights, the energy in their voices reduced to hushed explanations and desperate justifications. Their confidence has drained away, leaving only the ghost of the arrogance they once carried so easily. Those who once accused you with fire in their voices now stumble over their own words, struggling to align their shifting stories. The walls are closing in, and this time, they are the ones looking for a way out. But the reckoning isn't just happening here, in the visible, in the tangible. It is happening in the unseen, in the spaces they cannot control. The balance has tipped, and the force that moves beyond their reach has set things in motion They can neither fight nor escape. What they sent out is returning, faster, sharper, and without mercy. They built their foundation on deception, convinced they would never have to pay the cost. But the cost has come due, and now they are the ones left to face it.